Mochi Health is a long-term weight loss solution personalized to fit your unique needs and goals. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who are on a mission to listen. Eligible patients can access custom-formulated GLP-1 medications at an affordable, set price and get them delivered to their home each month. No insurance required, FSA and HSA accepted. With 24/7 customer service available, Mochi Health is here to partner with you on your journey to a healthier life. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com.
Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. WISP gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? WISP is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Investies. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. This week on the podcast, we are going to review the new all-time high that the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ hit last week. Let's take a look at the catalyst and what this can potentially mean for the stock market in the future. Investies, last week we had a record-breaking week, and I want to recap how much we increased in just that week alone. For the Dow, we went up 3.9%. For the S&P 500, we went up 3.51%, and for the NASDAQ, we went up 4.69%. Of course, the NASDAQ was the one that was leading this rally, and I want to call out a few of the winners. Netflix last week alone went up 8.25%. Nvidia, 10.72%. And get ready for this one, because this one is wild. Coinbase, 17%. This is growth for 1 week. 1 week. In a month, Coinbase has increased by 37%. And since April 7th's all-time low, where everything across the board was affected, since then, Coinbase has increased 133%. I definitely want to talk to you about some of the catalysts on the growth that Coinbase has had. I don't want to leave you hanging with why so much growth in such a short period of time. But before I do that, I just want us to pause right here, most especially for our new listeners. These examples of how much growth individual stocks are having in comparison to an index fund is why I am such an advocate on investing in individual stocks. Now, as a reminder, the S&P 500 on average will grow anywhere from 8 to 10% in 1 year. So the growth that we've seen in 1 week is definitely something to be extremely impressed with. But when we compare an index fund to an actual stock, it is just a completely different experience. And the type of growth that you can have with individual stocks is incomparable to investing into an index fund. Is it more riskier? Yes, absolutely. But as we know with investing, without taking a risk, there is absolutely no reward. And the key here is to always remain patient. And then, of course, take advantage of moments where the stock market is down. And here's the thing about Coinbase. It has been down for a long time in the sense that we really haven't seen growth from when it IPO'd. In fact, it is just now breaking the levels that it hit back in April of 2021 when the company first became public. And for part of 2022 and into 2023, for over a year and a half, the company was at really low levels. And while there may have been some issues with the company itself in terms of it being new and Bitcoin being down and fraudulent coins coming into the market, the biggest catalyst for its downturn was the economy. And then everything after that sort of crumbled. We are witnessing the stars align for Coinbase right now. It has recovered, and the investors that have hung in there are finally making their money back. And for those that bought in when it hit lows, well, they're winning right now. So let's talk about some of the catalysts that Coinbase has had in the last few months that has made the stock surge 133% in just 1 month. Coinbase was recently included in the S&P 500. This is a very big milestone for any publicly traded company to reach. It essentially means that you are one of the biggest companies in the United States of America, and by default, that makes you one of the biggest companies in the entire globe. So that in and of itself produces a ton of catalysts for the stock to increase in value. Now, in order to be a part of the S&P 500, there are inclusion requirements. They have a committee that is continuously reviewing the 500 companies that are in the index. And then, of course, they're reviewing potential companies that can become part of the index. I'm not going to go over all of the requirements, but I do want to go over a few just so that you can get an idea of what it takes to be a part of the S&P 500. Now, one of the biggest things is market capitalization. The S&P 500 committee wants to make sure that you do, in fact, have the market cap to participate. And this market cap has a threshold of at least 18 billion. Now, this number does change. Inflation and other factors go into why it changes. Currently, as it stands, there is an $18 billion market capitalization requirement. Another requirement is the liquidity, meaning that each publicly traded company must have adequate liquidity to participate, which currently, as it stands, is 250,000 shares that are being traded monthly. And these 250,000 shares traded monthly for the last 6 months. And then, of course, profitability. They want to make sure that every company that is participating in the index is a profitable company. They have to have been profitable in the most recent quarter, and then they also have to have been profitable in 4 of the last 5 quarters. Now, in order for Coinbase to become part of the S&P 500, several things needed to have happened. There had to have been a company that no longer qualified for the requirements. What took place in this specific case is a little different. Discover Financial Services got purchased by Capital One. Both of those companies were part of the S&P 500. Now that Capital One is going to absorb Discover, there is going to be space for another company. And so Coinbase fulfilled that space. So what I want you to understand through this process in the beginning, as I was explaining it, I was telling you that this alone creates multiple catalysts for the stock price to increase. The stock price of a stock increases because people are purchasing more shares. That is what creates the stock price to drive up. And so what happens is the S&P 500 needs to purchase a certain amount of shares, other different indexes, that may be also tracking certain companies in the S&P, they also purchase more shares. And that just sort of takes on an effect of its own for retail investors. Now that we see that this company is part of a index fund like the S&P 500, that can also make it a catalyst for us to purchase. That may be a personal requirement that you have as an investor, that it has to be part of the S&P. And so all of those different factors create more momentum in the stock.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Another catalyst is one that I feel is really underrated. It is a stock upgrade. So we constantly have analysts from different banks that are analyzing stock and trying to identify what can potentially make this stock price go even higher, or why we should even be paying attention to a specific stock. And so upgrading a stock to a different stock price can generate a lot of momentum in the stock as well. And recently we had Coinbase that was upgraded by Oppenheimer. It was upgraded by JMP. It was upgraded by Rosenblatt, all increasing their price targets, ranging from $400 to $421. And so this is also an indicator to retail investors that they should consider purchasing, because the analyst is suggesting the purchase, and then they will cite their reasons on why you should purchase the stock. Another catalyst for Coinbase was innovative product expansion. So when a publicly traded company offers a new product, offers something that is innovative, that is going to generate more revenue or generate opportunity for the company, then that is a strong catalyst. People will start to load up on shares based on the potential expansion and increase in their revenue. And so Coinbase recently began supporting stable coins, which is different from cryptocurrency coins. In addition to the product expansion, they also had legislative momentum on their side. So another catalyst where there was legislation that was going to benefit the company and the company's sector. So anytime that you have legislators writing and passing laws, these can create momentums for the stock on the upside or on the downside, depending on how the law is going to impact the publicly traded company. In the case of Coinbase, they had legislative momentum because there was a U.S. Senate Genius Act was the name of the bill, and it was a regulatory framework for stable coins. For this specific case, it created optimism in the sector and for the company itself. And the last really big catalyst for Coinbase is the technology momentum that is currently taking place in the market. Make no mistake that the rally that we are witnessing in the S&P 500 is coming from and being driven by the technology sector. And so while other technology companies may not have the stars aligned the way Coinbase has the last few months, they will still fold into a rally because of the current technology momentum that is taking place. Aside from the momentum in technology, there is another overarching catalyst that is driving the market up as a whole, at least for last Thursday and last Friday. Yes, we have the technology momentum, but we also are still dealing with tariffs. We were under the impression that the date to deal with tariffs was going to be on July 9th. If you remember, on April 8th, Trump signed an executive order stating that, all of these countries were not going to have to pay the tariffs until 3 months out. This gave us a 3-month extension. He also communicated that he was going to aggressively be negotiating with all these other countries and come to terms, and we would have a solution by July 9th. Now we know that there are no deals yet with all these countries, for the exception of China and the UK. The issue here is that we are approaching a deadline. However, on Thursday and Friday, the press secretary and the Secretary of the United States Treasury communicated that there was room for us to push this out even further, which is very typical Trump. He's going to continue to kick the can down the road. That is what sent stocks up another level. So the technology momentum got us to a recovery point from our all-time low back on April 7th. And then this news from the press secretary and the U.S. Treasury Department sent us up, breaking record highs. We did, however, on Friday, briefly go negative. The reason why is because Trump ended all U.S. trade talks with Canada over a digital tax that they wanted to implement. And he released a statement that says, "We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% in tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced that they are putting a digital tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country." And so this really sent the stock market spiraling. It took back its gains, but then it quickly recovered. And one of the reasons it recovered is because Trump also then said, "We can do whatever we want." This was a separate statement from what was released that I just read to you. This was actually in a press conference, and he was speaking to the deadline of the tariffs that would be implemented on July 9th. He said we could extend it or we could make it shorter. But that really made the stock market feel confident that what would most likely happen is that we would end up extending it. However, for us to extend it would mean that he would have to formally update the executive order that he signed back in April. Now, obviously, we expect him to update that executive order if he's going to follow through with the extension. I just want to make it very clear that as of Friday, June 27th, it has not been extended. So this means that anything goes as of the recording of this episode. Let's move on to a little bit of a look ahead. I am not a fan of the stock market in times like these. I do not like the euphoria because I know where this next step of the roller coaster leads us. It could take us up a little further, but everything that goes up must come down. And while I'm not a fan of when the stock market is about to drop, I am certainly a fan when it is closer to the ground, because that is when I get excited. That is when I can start purchasing stocks and really participate in the market. So while the ride up is a lot of fun, I get weary when we reach the top because it makes me nervous. The stock market is fragile at these points and anything can knock it down. And we do have July 9th up ahead. And there are all of these other uncertainties that are currently taking place. Any little thing can upset the stock market and make it go down. I think I do expect for us to see a little bit more of a rally. That would not surprise me, but I am weary. On the other side of that rally is definitely a leg down. And when it does come down, I will be prepared. And I hope that you will be prepared and participating as well. So that is the stock market update for last week. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are enjoying Investies, I ask you to please head over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review us. This is a really simple way to give back to the podcast and also amplify the podcast itself. Please share these episodes with someone that you think would be interested in our content. I'm your host, Linda Garcia. Investies is a Cosmic Standard and In Luz We Trust production. A very special thank you to the team, Asia Simpson, Eliza Smith, and Jacob Winnick.